Not every unexplained case begins the same way. Some start with something being seen, a light in the distance, a figure that shouldn't be there, a detail that doesn't quite fit. Others begin quietly, with small discoveries or events that, at first, don't seem significant, but over time, certain patterns emerge. Reports that don't fully align, witness accounts that raise more questions than answers, and situations where, even after being examined, something remains unresolved. Across the United Kingdom, there have been cases like these, incidents that were noticed, sometimes investigated, and in some instances even documented, yet never fully understood. Because in these situations, it's not just about what was seen or found, it's about what couldn't be explained afterwards. There are places history tried to forget, and stories that were never meant to be told. But the deeper you look, the harder they are to ignore. This is Behind Truths. The tracks that appeared overnight and crossed places nothing should reach. After a night of fresh snowfall across parts of southern England, residents began to notice something unusual. At first, it seemed like an isolated detail, a line of footprints marking the snow. But as more people stepped outside, it became clear that this was not confined to a single location. The tracks stretched across multiple towns and villages, forming a continuous trail that extended 4 miles. What made them difficult to explain wasn't just their length, it was their pattern. The prints appeared in a single file line, evenly spaced, as though something had moved with a consistent rhythm. They didn't resemble the typical tracks of known animals in the area, and there was no clear variation to suggest hesitation, change in direction, or interaction with the surroundings. Even more unusual was where they were found. The trail reportedly crossed rooftops, passed over walls, and continued across enclosed spaces that would have been difficult for most animals or people to access without interruption. In some areas, the tracks seemed to disappear, only to reappear again further ahead, continuing in the same direction. Naturally, attention grew quickly. Local reports were collected, and attempts were made to identify a possible source. Various explanations were proposed, from small animals moving in unusual patterns to environmental effects caused by melting and refreezing snow. Some suggested that a sequence of natural factors could have altered ordinary tracks into something that appeared far more structured. These explanations account for certain aspects of the event, but not all of them, because the scale, consistency, and placement of the footprints remain difficult to reconcile with a single, clear cause. No confirmed source was ever identified, no definitive conclusion was reached, and over time, the event became one of the most discussed unexplained occurrences in the region, not because of what people believed it was, but because of how little could be proven about it. Even now, the question remains, what could have created a trail like that, across such distances, in such a precise pattern, and in places that seemed impossible to reach? And if a series of footprints could raise that many questions. The next case begins with something seen from a distance, a light in the sky, followed by a moment that would later be remembered very differently depending on who you ask. The night the mountains lit up, and the reports never fully aligned. Wales. On the night of January 23, 1974, something unusual was reported across parts of North Wales. It began with a loud sound, described by some as an explosion, by others as something closer to a distant impact. Almost immediately after, residents in the area reported seeing lights in the sky above the Berwyn Mountains. These weren't brief flashes or distant glows. Several witnesses described a bright, concentrated light descending toward the mountainside. Some said it appeared to move with intent, while others focused on the intensity, strong enough to stand out against the dark landscape. Around the same time, a tremor was recorded in the region. Seismological data later confirmed that ground movement had occurred that night, which led some to initially believe that what had been heard was a natural event, possibly a small earthquake. But that didn't fully explain what people claimed to have seen. Emergency services received multiple calls. Concerned about the possibility of an aircraft incident, responders were dispatched toward the area where the lights had reportedly been observed. What happened next is where the accounts begin to diverge. Some reports suggest that access to certain areas was limited shortly after the event. Others claim that the location was searched, but no clear evidence of a crash or debris was found. Official explanations pointed toward a combination of natural factors, the tremor, combined with visual misinterpretations caused by lights in the distance or atmospheric conditions. And for some, that was enough, but not for everyone, because the timing of the events, the sound, the lights, and the ground movement created a sequence that didn't feel entirely coincidental to those who experienced it. Over time, the incident became one of the most discussed unexplained events in Wales, not because a single explanation was accepted, but because none of them fully accounted for every detail reported that night. Even now, questions remain. Were the lights connected to the tremor? Was something misidentified in the moment? Or was more than one event happening at the same time, creating the impression of something else entirely? The answers were never firmly established, and as the details became less clear over time, the incident remained open to interpretation. But if that case involves something seen from a distance, the next one is different, because this time, the unexplained detail wasn't witnessed in motion. It was captured in a photograph and only noticed after it had already been taken. The disappearance that followed a violent night and was never resolved. In November 1974, a case emerged in London that would quickly draw national attention, not only because of what happened, but because of who was involved. Richard John Bingham, known as Lord Lucan, was a member of the British aristocracy. His life, by public standards, was structured and visible, but behind that image, there were personal difficulties, financial pressure, strained relationships, and an ongoing dispute involving his family. On the night of November 7th, an incident took place at the home of his estranged wife. According to reports, the family's nanny was attacked in the basement of the property. Shortly after, Lady Lucan also reported being assaulted, but managed to escape and seek help. In the immediate aftermath, attention turned to Lord Lucan. Evidence suggested that he had been present at the house that night, but when authorities attempted to locate him, he was gone. His car was later found abandoned, with signs that raised further questions, including indications that something had taken place inside the vehicle. However, these details did not provide a clear sequence of events or confirm what happened after he left the scene. From that point forward, the case shifted from investigation to mystery. Extensive efforts were made to track his movements. Sightings were reported in different locations, some taken seriously, others quickly dismissed. Over time, theories developed that he may have fled the country, assumed a new identity, or met an unknown fate shortly after disappearing. None of these possibilities were ever confirmed. No verified trace of Lord Lucan was found. No conclusive evidence emerged to establish what happened to him after that night. And despite the scale of the investigation, the case remained unresolved. What makes this situation particularly difficult to explain is not just the disappearance itself, but the context surrounding it. A high-profile individual, a known sequence of events, a clear starting point, and then, suddenly, nothing, no confirmed movement, no final location, no closure. Even decades later, the case continues to be discussed, not because of speculation, but because of the absence of resolution. Because when someone disappears under circumstances that are already being closely examined, you would expect answers to follow. But in this case, they never did. And if a disappearance in a controlled environment can remain unresolved, the final case shifts away from people entirely. Because this time, the unexplained detail was not something that vanished. It was something that appeared, quietly, in the background of an ordinary photograph. the figure that appeared in the background and was never clearly identified. In May 1964, a man named Jim Templeton took a photograph of his young daughter while they were out near the Solway Firth in Cumbria. At the time, nothing about the moment seemed unusual. The setting was open countryside, the weather was clear, and according to Templeton, no one else was present in the immediate area when the photo was taken. It wasn't until the film was developed that something unexpected appeared. Behind his daughter, in the background of the image, there was a figure, tall, upright, and dressed in what appeared, at least to some, like a light-colored suit with a helmet-like shape. The figure had not been noticed at the time the photograph was taken. Templeton maintained that no one was standing behind his daughter, no passerby, no one entering the frame, yet the image seemed to show otherwise. As the photograph gained attention, it was examined and discussed more widely. Experts analyzed the negative, looking for signs of manipulation or alteration. None were found. The image was considered genuine in the sense that it had not been tampered with, but that did not explain what was actually captured. Over time, several explanations were proposed. Some suggested that the figure could have been a person standing further away, positioned in such a way that the perspective made them appear closer or differently shaped. Others pointed to lighting conditions, the brightness of the sky, combined with exposure settings, potentially altering how details were recorded on film. These interpretations offer plausible possibilities, but as with many cases like this, they do not fully resolve the central question, because the person who took the photograph remained consistent in his account. No one was there, and if someone had been present, it raises another question. Why were they not noticed at the time? The image became known as the Solway Firth spaceman, not because of a confirmed explanation, but because of how unusual it appeared when first seen. And even after analysis, the figure was never definitively identified, which leaves the case in a familiar position. A real photograph, a visible detail, and no single explanation that fully accounts for both. Across this video, we've explored 4 real cases connected to the United Kingdom, each one involving something that was seen, found, or reported, but never fully explained. A trail of footprints that appeared overnight, crossing distances in ways that seemed impossible. A night in the mountains, marked by lights, sound, and ground movement that never fully aligned. A high-profile disappearance that began with a clear sequence of events and ended without answers, and a photograph that revealed something no one recalled seeing at the time. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these cases do you think has the most reasonable explanation, and which one still feels unresolved? And more importantly, do you think these events are simply the result of missing details, or something that was never fully understood to begin with? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes the most unsettling part of a mystery is not what we don't know, it's how much we do know, and how it still doesn't explain everything.